The thing is, I thought I was saving my marriage when I invited my husband onto that show. Of course, I knew the cameras would make the conversation sharper, but I thought sharper meant clearer. I told myself Daniel needed to hear the truth without joking his way out of it. So when the host asked what I really thought of him, I answered too honestly. By the next morning, the whole internet knew what my husband had heard before I did. My name is Vanessa Cole. I was 34, and I worked as a self-development content strategist for a women's lifestyle platform. The thing is, I knew how to make hard feelings sound clean, brave, and useful. Of course, that made me believe I understood honesty better than people who only felt it and never named it. My home office smelled like cold coffee and the lavender candle I lit when writing captions about growth. On my desk sat a small black podcast microphone I used for voice notes, content drafts, and practice clips for creators who paid me to make them sound wiser than they were. I liked that microphone. It made my thoughts feel shaped. Daniel used to read my drafts before I posted them. He would sit at the kitchen island with his laptop open, one hand around a mug, and leave practical comments in the margins. He was never poetic. My husband was 36 and worked as an operations manager for a logistics company, so he thought in schedules, fixes, and dry little jokes that made hard things smaller. For years, I loved that. On Sundays, we made coffee and planned the week. He would ask which articles scared me most, then help me turn the argument clearer. Back then, his steadiness felt like support. Later, it started to feel like a chair I had outgrown, but still had to sit in. One evening, I was watching a clip from Open Table, the relationship show where women talked about emotional growth under soft studio lights. A guest said she had outgrown a husband who was stable but empty. I replayed it twice. Daniel came in with tea and said the internet was getting close to charging women rent for hating comfort. I told him he always joked when something serious got close. He said joking was not the same as not caring. The thing is, I heard that as another joke with better posture. He asked softly if I felt like the clip was about us. Of course I said no. Too fast, maybe. I looked back at the screen instead of him. My phone buzzed. Kelsey had sent a message saying women should stop protecting men from uncomfortable truths. I smiled before I answered. Daniel saw the smile. Then he looked at the muted clip behind me, where the guest was still nodding under perfect lights. The coffee shop where Kelsey liked to meet smelled like cinnamon syrup and wet coats. She chose the window table because she said people looked more honest when strangers could see them. That was Kelsey. She made performance sound like freedom, maybe because her own divorce had been so quiet that no one noticed it until she changed her last name back. The thing is, Kelsey understood the part of me that hated being made small by politeness. 2 lattes. 1 phone between us. Of course, she said Daniel was not a bad man before saying every bad thing she thought. She told me Daniel sounded emotionally padded, safe, soft, useful, but not awake. I told her he was not useless. Then I said he could be useless in hard conversations. Not useless as a person. Emotionally useless. There was a difference in my head. There always was. Kelsey leaned forward and said private conversations had failed because Daniel controlled the tone with humor. She said a public format might finally make him listen without escaping into another little joke. I said I was not trying to shame him. She said accountability only felt like shame to people avoiding it. That sentence stayed with me because it sounded like something I would write for a client. Clean, shareable, almost kind. That night, I commented under an Open Table clip about women carrying emotional growth alone. I did not write Daniel's name. I did not write husband. I wrote generally, which is how people pretend they are not being specific. The producer emailed the next morning. Her name was Ariana Vale, and she said my comment had the exact tension they wanted for a segment about women who felt they had outgrown their husbands. She asked if I would be open to a preliminary call. I told myself it was a conversation, not content. The thing is, most dangerous things begin by sounding professional. I took the call in a small conference room at work during lunch. Juno Park was 2 desks away outside the glass wall, packing a tote bag and pretending not to hear because polite people do that before they become witnesses. Ariana asked what Daniel was like when conversations got difficult. Her voice was warm, trained, the kind of warmth that made you give a sharper answer because it felt safe in her hands. I said Daniel could be mindless when emotions required depth. I said he gave jokes where thought should be. I said sometimes he was useless when I needed real reflection. The words came out smooth because I had rehearsed versions of them in my head for months. Juno's hand paused on her tote strap. I saw it and kept talking. Ariana said that was powerful language. She said women at home would understand exactly what I meant. I felt chosen by that. Not admired exactly. Chosen. As if a professional had confirmed that my private frustration had a public purpose. When I told Daniel that evening, he was paying bills at the kitchen island. The dishwasher hummed behind him, and the old podcast microphone sat on my desk in the next room with its tiny green light off. I said Open Table had contacted me. He looked up and asked if that was the show with dramatic chairs and people explaining why love had become a group project. I told him not to do that. He put the pen down. That was rare. Daniel usually kept his hands busy when a conversation could turn painful. He asked what the episode was about. I said women who felt they were growing faster than their husbands. He nodded once. He asked if I had already told them he was the husband. I said I had spoken generally. He asked what generally meant when the person on the call knew my name, my marriage length, and the fact that he existed. That made me angry because it was specific. Specific questions always felt like traps when I knew I had skipped a step. I told him this could help us. I said a structured conversation with a host might finally keep us from repeating the same fight. I said private talks went nowhere because he always made pain sound funny. Daniel asked why a marriage conversation needed studio lights and an audience. I said because at home he had too much room to avoid me. He looked at me longer than I liked. Then he asked calmly if I had called him emotionally useless on the producer call. The kitchen got small. I asked where he had heard that. He said he had not meant to listen, but I had taken the call in a glass room beside Juno, and Juno had messaged him because she thought he should know the framing before he agreed to be filmed. That was the first small betrayal from my circle, though I called it concern when it suited me later. I told him emotionally useless was not the same as useless. He looked down at the bill in front of him, then back up at me. He said he understood the difference I wanted to exist. That sentence should have slowed me. Instead, I heard judgment. The producer sent the draft episode title the next day while my laptop was open on the dining table. When Daniel walked past, the subject line filled the screen. When a woman outgrows her husband. He stopped behind my chair. I could feel him reading it. He asked if this was the conversation I wanted, or the verdict I had already submitted. The thing is, I believed he was proving my point by resisting the format. If he refused, he feared growth. If he came, he finally had to hear me. I told him we needed to put everything on the table. Daniel looked at the laptop, then at me, and said the table already looked set. The studio was smaller than it looked online. That surprised me. On screen, Open Table seemed wide and warm, all velvet chairs and calm lights. In person, it smelled like hot cables, hairspray, and coffee that had been sitting too long in paper cups. The thing is, the smell made it feel official. 2 makeup chairs. 1 audience line behind a black curtain. Of course, I told myself official meant safe. I arrived early. Ariana's assistant gave me a bottle of water and led me into makeup, where a woman with silver rings told me my skin would read well under the lights. Read well? I liked that phrase. It made me feel like the room was built to understand me. Daniel sat in the waiting room, reading the episode card. He wore a navy sweater and dark pants. Simple, steady, nothing dramatic. The same man who had helped me fix article drafts for years. The same man who had joked too many times when I wanted him to sit inside the discomfort without decorating it. Ariana came in before the show and told us the goal was radical honesty, not blame. She said the audience respected vulnerability. She said people at home needed language for the conversations they were afraid to have. I held on to radical honesty like it had been handed to me as permission. Daniel asked whether radical honesty included protecting each other from unnecessary harm. Ariana smiled in that trained way hosts smile when guests complicate the clean premise. She said harm sometimes came from silence too. I looked at Daniel as if she had settled it. On stage, the lights were bright enough that the audience disappeared into shapes. That helped at first. I could feel people there, but I did not have to meet them one by one. Ariana welcomed us, thanked us for being brave, and turned to me first. She asked why I wanted this conversation in public. I said because private conversations kept dissolving into jokes. I said Daniel was good at making me laugh, but laughter had started to feel like a locked door. The audience made a soft sound. Supportive, I thought. Understanding. Daniel said he thought honesty should have started at home. He said it without heat. That made it sound noble, and I hated that. Ariana asked if I felt emotionally alone in the marriage. The question came with such soft concern that my answer leaned forward before I checked it. I said yes. I said Daniel was stable, and stability could be beautiful, but sometimes it became a wall you slept beside. The audience murmured again. The thing is, I mistook that sound for agreement. It was only attention. Ariana asked what kind of wall. I looked at Daniel. He was watching me, not the audience, still giving me the chance to choose smaller words. I did not. I said that when emotions became hard, Daniel could become mindless. I said it felt like he waited for instructions instead of thinking with me. I said I had spent years dragging depth out of a man who could solve any schedule problem but could not sit still inside a feeling. A woman in the second row covered her mouth. Someone else made a low sound. Ariana leaned in. She asked if I meant Daniel could not meet me on my level. That phrase, my level, should have warned me. It did not. It gave my resentment a cleaner outfit. I said sometimes he was useless in the moments where a husband should matter most. I said not useless as a person, of course. Emotionally useless. I said I was tired of translating that into softer language at home. The room changed. Not all at once. It changed through bodies. A man in the audience shifted back. A woman who had been nodding stopped. Ariana's smile stayed, but her eyes sharpened because the clip had arrived and everyone knew it. Daniel did not interrupt. He looked down at the small black microphone clipped to his sweater. His thumb touched the wire once. Then he looked at me. Ariana asked him how it felt to hear that. He said Vanessa had invited him there to be corrected, not heard. Quiet. No performance. The quiet made the lights feel hotter. I told him this was exactly what he did. I said he turned every truth into proof that he was wounded, so I would have to soften it. I said I was trying to help us by being honest where he could not joke his way out. The audience did not give me the sound I wanted. I tried to repair it while still winning. I said mindless did not mean stupid. Useless did not mean worthless. I said I meant he had been absent from the emotional work. I said people online would understand the difference. Daniel did not answer. He reached up slowly and removed the microphone from his sweater. He placed it on the small table between our chairs, careful with the wire, as if the object still deserved gentleness. Ariana tried to move to a closing question, but the room was already watching the microphone. That was the first time I understood the object had become larger than my explanation. After the taping, I checked my phone in the parking lot. Kelsey had sent fire emojis during the first half. Then nothing. The clip was already online. My words had captions now. Mindless. Useless. Husband. Relationship show. Daniel walked to the car without asking if I was ready. Home did not feel private after the episode. The hallway looked the same with Daniel's shoes near the bench and my tote on the hook, but the rooms felt borrowed. A clip can do that. It makes your own sofa feel like a public comment section. The thing is, I expected backlash from men who hated women speaking clearly. 2 tabs open, 1 phone charging. Of course, I did not expect women to sound so cold. By morning, the clip had thousands of comments. People called me cruel, arrogant, performative, and worse. Some said Daniel's face had said more than all my words. Others kept repeating emotionally useless like it was a stain I had spilled on myself. I posted that the clip was taken out of context. That made it worse. The full episode went up at noon, and people watched the parts before the clip. They saw Ariana ask if I wanted to soften the language. They saw Daniel say, "Honesty should have started at home." They saw me lean into the phrase after the audience first murmured. Juno did not answer my message asking if she had seen the mess. Talia sent only that the internet did not misunderstand the clip. Then she stopped typing. Kelsey finally replied after lunch. She said maybe I should stay offline for a day. The thing is, Kelsey had called the show brave before strangers called it cruel. I stared at her message until the screen dimmed. Daniel came home with groceries because we still needed milk, bread, coffee. That almost offended me. Ordinary tasks felt indecent after public damage. He put the bags on the counter and asked if I had eaten. Same old question. Same old care. I told him not to do that. He asked what. I said not to act normal after letting strangers turn me into a monster. He took the milk from the bag and placed it in the fridge. Then he said he had not posted the clip. He had not edited it. He had not told me to say those words. I told him the internet misunderstood me. He said the words were clear. I said I was trying to explain a dynamic. He said I had explained it by making him sit beside me while I called him mindless and useless. The thing is, he was calm in the way that makes a person sound correct before they even finish. I hated that calm because I had no clean place to put my anger. Mara called that evening. Daniel's sister had always been polite to me, even when she did not like my jokes. She asked why I needed a studio audience to call her brother useless. I told her she was protecting him from accountability. Mara said accountability did not require applause. That sentence spread through me like cold water, but I did not let it show. I told her she had not lived in our marriage. She said no, but she had watched Daniel become smaller every time I explained him to other people, as if he were a slow student. I ended the call first. That felt like power for about 4 seconds. Later, I sat alone in the bedroom with my phone turned sideways. I replayed the clip. Not the whole episode, just the part everyone kept sharing. The studio lights made my skin look warm, my posture was perfect, my voice was calm. Ariana's face held that careful host expression that meant the answer was useful for television. Then the camera cut to Daniel. He did not look angry. He did not look embarrassed in the way I had imagined. There was no wounded husband performance. His face simply became quiet in a different way. The eyes changed first. Not wide, not wet, just less available. His mouth closed and something behind it seemed to close too. For 1 second I almost saw it. He had not lost the argument. He had stopped offering himself to it. The clip kept playing, but my finger hovered above the screen. Daniel on that stage was not avoiding me. He was leaving a room I had built around his humiliation. The microphone on the table was not dramatic. It was a returned object. My throat tightened, so I pressed delete from my saved folder. Then I opened my profile and wrote that people hated women who spoke uncomfortable truths. Daniel came to the doorway while I was posting. He saw the screen. He did not ask me to stop. He only turned around and walked back down the hall. That was worse than another argument. The next morning, the producers emailed. The subject line said, "Can this marriage survive radical honesty?" Ariana wanted us back for a follow-up. Daniel read it on his phone, then placed the phone face down on the counter. He said nothing for a long time. Then he said he would go. Of course, I thought that meant there was still something to save. The second studio day felt colder before anyone spoke. Same building, same hallway, same smell of hairspray and hot lights. But the assistant did not smile as quickly. and the audience line outside the curtain watched me with phones already in their hands. The thing is, I came back to repair the meaning. 2 cameras. 1 second chance. Of course, I thought more context would make people understand me. Kelsey had promised to come. She said she would sit where I could see her so I would not feel alone. In makeup, I checked my phone 3 times. No message. In the waiting room, I looked toward the audience entrance. No Kelsey. I told myself parking was bad. Ariana came in and said the audience needed accountability, not defensiveness. I nodded like I agreed. What I heard was that if I chose better words, the same truth could still win. Daniel sat beside me, calm enough to make my skin prickle. He wore a dark jacket and a plain shirt. No sharp outfit, no visible statement. He looked like a man attending a meeting that had already been decided. I asked if he was okay. He said he was clear. That word again. Clear. I wanted him emotional because emotional meant negotiable. Clear meant there was a line somewhere, and I did not know when he had drawn it. On stage, the audience did not greet me the same way. The first time there had been curiosity, maybe sympathy. This time there was weight. People had seen the clip. People had chosen sides before the lights came up. Ariana began gently. She said the last episode had created a strong public response. She asked if I regretted calling Daniel mindless and useless. I said I regretted the wording. Then I added that I did not regret the honesty behind it. The room went still in a way cameras love. Daniel looked at me once. Not sharply, just once. Ariana asked him what he heard in that answer. He said Vanessa kept apologizing for the audience hearing it, not for him having to sit beside her while she said it. That landed badly for me. I could tell by the small sound from the 3rd row. Not a gasp. A recognition. I said I had been trying to help us. I said he knew private conversations failed because he joked his way out of them. I said every serious conversation in our marriage became something he could shrink with humor until I felt childish for needing it. That was the one thing I had right. Daniel nodded. He said I was right about that. He said he had used humor when he should have stayed serious. He said he had made some of my pain feel like a scene he could diffuse instead of a truth he had to hold. The audience went quiet because he did not defend himself. It should have helped me. Instead, it took my weapon out of my hands and placed it gently on the table. He continued. He said my truth did not need a studio audience, a viral clip, or strangers nodding while I made him smaller. He said I had chosen a room where the worst version of my sentence could live forever. I told him he was twisting my intention. He said intention was what I kept for myself. Impact was what I handed him in public. Ariana leaned forward. She knew this was strong television. I could see it in her posture, the stillness of a host who smells the exact moment a clip becomes inevitable. I looked toward the audience for Kelsey. Her promised seat was empty. A woman I did not know sat there with a folded program in her lap. The absence was small on camera, but it took something from me. Ariana asked where we went from here. Daniel reached into his jacket. The movement changed the air around my chair. He took out a folder and placed it on the table between us. Not thrown, not pushed. Placed. Like the microphone from last time, careful enough to hurt more. I whispered that he was humiliating me now. He looked at the folder, then at me. He said I chose the venue, the audience, the language, and the 2nd episode. He said he only chose the ending. My hands stayed in my lap. I could not make them move toward the folder. Ariana asked if he was saying the marriage was over. Daniel said yes. One word. No decoration. I told him this was not what I meant when I said I wanted honesty. He said he knew. He said that was part of the problem. I wanted honesty with a safety net for myself and a spotlight on him. The audience did not clap. Nobody cheered. That made it worse. If they had reacted loudly, I could have called them cruel. Their silence gave me no enemy. Ariana tried to ask Daniel one more question. He removed his clip-on microphone. Again. This time, he set it beside the folder and stood before she finished. He thanked the show for having him. Polite, controlled, almost professional. Then he walked off stage. His microphone was still live for a few seconds. We heard his footsteps before a producer cut the audio. The studio stayed silent behind him. The hallway outside the studio was too bright. White walls, grey floor, a snack table with unopened water bottles. My microphone was still clipped to my blouse because I had walked off before the audio assistant could remove it. The thing is, I thought the worst part had already happened on stage. One folder, one empty seat. Of course, I was still thinking in scenes instead of consequences. A man near the exit asked for Vanessa Cole by full name. I turned because people had been saying my name all week. He held an envelope and asked me to sign. Ariana stood near the hallway corner with Reed, the executive producer. A studio assistant stopped moving a crate of cables. I signed because refusing in front of them would have looked like guilt. Inside the envelope was a petition for dissolution of marriage and a motion for temporary exclusive use of the marital home and preservation of joint accounts. The temporary orders hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. My thumb bent the top page while I read the first paragraph. I smoothed it flat, then bent it again in the same place. The filing referenced the first episode, the viral clip, my post defending the wording, the producer emails, and the second live episode. It also included the release forms I had signed and the email where I requested the follow-up because I wanted a fuller chance to explain my truth. I told Ariana that Daniel had ambushed me. Ariana's face changed into professional concern, not personal loyalty. She said I had approved the topic framing, requested the follow-up, and signed the release. Reed told the assistant to pause promotional clips until legal reviewed usage. That was the first neutral sentence I could not bend into an attack. Ariana released a statement 2 hours later saying the show supported honest dialogue but did not control guest outcomes. I moved into a short-term apartment with rented furniture because Daniel stayed in the house until the hearing. Our joint accounts were restricted, and every purchase over a set amount needed a documented purpose. Mara blocked me, Juno stopped answering, Talia removed me from a private group chat, and Kelsey never explained the empty seat. Ariana protected Open Table by saying I came voluntarily and understood the format. My employer removed me from 2 public panels about emotional intelligence and called it a scheduling issue. The thing is, I thought public honesty would make Daniel finally hear me. I thought the microphone would turn my pain into something he could not joke away. It only made everyone else hear how little respect I had left for him. I wanted a witness for my hurt and became the clearest evidence against myself. The clip-on microphone sat muted on the empty studio table. The room finally went quiet when I had no one left to convince.